A Guerrilla Podcast Syndicate production. Behind the Podcast with Nico Santos. This show is about people behind the microphone and their story, how they started their journey to become successful podcaster. They will share help and tips in this growing industry. Behind the Podcast with Guerrilla Podcast Syndicate founder Nico Santos. Samu't-Sari Conversation with Mimi. To connect with other women who may need someone to talk to around everyday's life issues and challenges, from managing career and household to inner productivity, relationships, and other hot topics. Samu't-Sari Conversation with Mimi.
Hello, Humanista. This is another episode of Behind the Podcast. So, our second episode, it's about Samu't-Sari. So, what is Samu't-Sari? So, hindi to sari-sari store. But, yeah, so, our guest for today is behind the podcast of Samu't-Sari, Conversation with Mimi. So, please welcome, of course, sino pa ba yan? It's si Mimi. How are you? Good evening. Good evening. Good morning.
Hi, Miko. Hi, everyone who are listening, watching us today at this time. And I'm very excited, Miko, because this is a good idea that you created, which is to know the people behind the programs. So I'm really happy to be invited to chat with you today. It's like conversations with Mimi tonight or today or whichever day that your audience members are watching or listening to us right now.
That's correct, Mimi. So, so people doesn't know you. So, can you tell us about yourself, Mimi?
Okay, so I'd first talk about myself. I'm identifying myself really now as a mom. Okay, so I'm since moving to Australia, my motherly duties have increased. So that's the primary description that I accord to myself. I'm a mom of three, not so young children anymore. I have a nurse who's just started her career. I have a 20-year-old son who's in midway in his university degree, and I have an 18-year-old who just started her university degree with a music field. She's into music. So I'm a mom. I'm a loving wife. I'm also a fur mom to two bunnies. And my work here in Australia is so different from my previous background. I'm working in the disability community development space. I look after people with disabilities as a volunteer manager and a coordinator. And I've come a long way since Philippines to New Zealand to Australia. The family hopes that we will stay here longer and settle here because the kids are tired of moving from one country to another. So I'm loving it. And podcasting is something that I thought of like maybe 2 years ago, but never had the courage. But when you contacted me to say, do you want to join? It solidified my desire to go back to my roots because I started my career in the Philippines as a broadcaster. So now full circle, 20 plus years later, I'm back doing it online, not in a radio station setup, but more on, the avenues or the platforms that you have enabled us to share our content.
So you're saying in a different kind of platform. Say it's not a different as a radio station. Are you been doing that in a radio station before?
Yes. So when I started my career, so it started at UP Los Baños. So I'm a graduate of UP Los Baños in the Philippines. My degree is in development communications. And then after that, my 80% of my work is radio based. So it's a radio station by the university But the programs that we have are news. So I handled news. I handled current affairs. I'm also the resident drama writer, creator, producer. And the shows that we have created target the people in the community. It's not like a general public, but farmers, people in the countryside, people that need a different kind of content. For example, how to improve their farming practices. What is currently happening in their community that will benefit them. So it's really targeted, and I found fulfillment doing that. But it was a stressful job in the sense that not just doing broadcasting, but 20% of our job is teaching, teaching younger students how to become broadcasters themselves. So my major is in broadcasting and my minor is in journalism. So that's where my skills in communication have started, and I translated that into an early career pathway.
All right. So it's during that time. Do you also, because you're UP, have you go to like a student protest long because
Yes, yes. To tell you honestly, there were some minor student protests that I have been involved with, but I did not go through the more makibaka type of protests. The ones that really go out into the streets of Manila, going to the what do you call that, Nico? That's the University Belt, Liwasang Bonifacio, and things
yeah,
like that.
Mindiola, yeah.
But mind you, my Makabayan spirit was still active because my husband and I were there during EDSA 3, during the time that we wanted Erap Estrada to be out of the power. So we went back to the streets, and as a couple, we shouted and chanted, Erap resign. So until then, my babies were really small at that time, but the fire in me is still there. So yes, the Dugong UP is still a little bit a part of me.
The reason why I asked that because during my younger years as well, I've been because during the PUP days, so we usually go to Benjola and then
Yes.
protest about everything. And
Yes.
because of that, I was in line to a radio station as well. So because
I see.
of that,
So we have some things in common during our younger years.
yeah. So yeah, so it's nice to bring it back. so
Yeah.
so you're saying you've been doing the on radio station like writing or producing. What is the difference between the podcasting? So
Yes. I think the difference is well, the one difference is you work as a team when you are in a radio station setup. There are production assistants, you have production technicians, you have people who will help you. Although majority of the work, because it's a university-based radio station, you are like a jack of all trades. You need to know how to edit, you need to know how to splice, you need to know how to select your music, you need to determine who your talents are. So my kind of mindset is that I need to know a lot. So the only difference now is I'm doing everything on my own. So there's nobody else to rely on to help me out, except for example my daughter. She knows a little bit about the techie, so she advises me, but she's not full on like a staff who's helping me. And I think the platform, for example YouTube, is very accessible. You need to have an account. You can load up your content. Unlike the radio station, you need a tower. You need a franchise from the NTC. You need to be able to only work within your assigned frequency. And then you can't make any decisions straight away because you have a manager, a boss, somebody higher than you to make decisions. But during my conceptualization of Samu't-Sari, I just asked a few people what they thought of my show, but the ultimate decision was me. Should I go ahead and do it? What's the format of the show? What's the title of my show? So I feel there's more autonomy at the present time. So we know that ABS-CBN, for example, in the Philippines, is undergoing a serious breach of their franchise, and therefore they have to temporarily cease operating using their normal physical channel, and they're only doing everything online. And I'm hoping that it is not the same rigidity that we have here using YouTube, for example. Of course, there are YouTube rules and policies and things that we have to look after, be aware of. But I don't think it is as stringent as the traditional radio station kind of way.
Okay. Yeah. So I agree with that. So it's a different type of platform.
Yes.
So, so let's go about into the podcasting. So
Yes.
how did you concept the Samu't-Sari conversation with Mimi?
Okay.
Have you thinking that for a long time ago? I've
Yes, I've
been
been thinking about that for a long, long time ago, but I just never had the courage. I think I needed a push from somebody, and luckily you were that person that pushed me to the edge. I watched a lot of Oprah Winfrey shows when I was kind of younger. I've always been a fan of Corina Sanchez. I've always been a fan of Senator Lauren Legarda. She's like my idol that I really wanted to have a career in mass media because of Lauren Legarda. So I said to myself, if they can do it, why can't I try to do it? So that is my inspiration why the format of my show is talking to people, interviewing them, and finding out more about their personality. So it's like a lifestyle or a personality profile kind of show. And at the same time, I want to inject new information, something really educational, that they can learn something from the experiences of another person. And the reason why it's called Samu't-Sari is because it's very general, meaning I can talk about a lot of different topics with a lot of different people. I don't really want to specialize at this time because I believe that people deserve to hear a lot of different things from my guests. So I'm really trying my best to make it interesting and relevant. So recently I had a teacher, I had a young person. Now the very recent one, I had an older person. So you learn from the experiences of others, and that's how I pick up my inspiration from, and hopefully the audience will also pick up the same inspiration.
all right. So just to let you know, our audience and listener, Mimi is also an author. So aside from podcasting, so she
Yes.
also an author. Is that being an author? Is that what do you say? Biglaan or naisip mo ba na you become an author and write some book?
Okay. So, Miko, like what I said, my history is all about communicating, Badaldal talaga ako. I really like talking, and I like connecting to people. And my other passion is writing. That's why I couldn't get rid of it. So over time, during my course of my academic study, I've always been writing things. I've always published stuff. But the writing that I do right now is not the academic writing anymore, but it's more around the creative side of me, which is, again, one of my dreams even when I was young. So it was only like 2 years ago when I conceptualized my children's books. I didn't even dream about writing a children's book, but the pathway towards getting there, it was revealed to me along the way. I was trying to write something else, but it didn't really materialize for some reason. And then through my consultation, through my research, I found that I could also write children's books. So that's why my first self-published book. And this year I wrote and published a book for mothers. It's like a self-help book. So I wanted to target the home. So looking after children, teaching them. And now I'm looking after the mothers, writing a self-help book for them because I wanted to serve in whatever way I can. So I'm thinking that information is gold. So by sharing what I have in my mind onto paper and giving it to somebody else is a way that I could serve them. So that's why it's not really biglaan, but the turn of events is what kind of material to write. That is an evolving thing. You start with one idea, you end up with something totally different.
Okay, so on that idea, are you also thinking of this book will be transferring to your own podcast that you're doing right now? Are you interconceptualize that as well? Like,
I haven't thought about that, but that's a very good idea that I could share some elements of my books in the podcast itself. Definitely, that's a very good idea. At the moment, my focus is to gain some traction, to gain a level of comfort interviewing people with different personalities and with different content. And eventually, I will include a little bit about my books. I'll probably do a podcast series about those children's books and possibly another series of information about the self-help, which is really good because I never thought that it would be a good vehicle to share that as well. Yeah.
that's fantastic. So for our listener and audience as well, what are they gonna expect to Samu't-Sari? So it's almost episode 8 now.
Yes.
So
Yes,
so
yes.
what did you expect in the
Okay.
future?
Yeah. So I was talking to my daughter one day, and she's also asking me the same questions. Mom, what is Samu't-Sari, and what's the purpose of Samu't-Sari, and who are you targeting? And I've already told you what I'm intending to do. So she said, so what's next, Mom? So it's the same question. I think my goal at the moment is to give more quality content. I'm going to try my best to really grab snippets of people's experiences in whatever stage of life they are in. And then by doing that, I will be finding a little bit more of, like what you said, maybe I'll focus a little bit more on a certain niche or a certain topic. But at the moment, I'm just happy to be spreading out my wings. For example, the episode 8 is all about older people. There will be a part 2 of that about older people's relationships. So I want to target that segment for now to engage them into this podcasting because most of them don't know what is a podcast. They've never heard of anything that what we're doing. So it's helping open up opportunities. So that's my goal at the moment. And then later on, when I get more established, then I'll hone in on certain areas that are most interesting to people.
All right, so I have no time for now. So any parting word or wrap up so that our audience and listener uh,
Yeah. So
message
again,
any
thank you,
message.
Miko. Yes, yes. So thank you, Miko, for inviting me. And I hope that people who have started to listen to Samu't-Sari, take a lot of value from the content that we share. And I do encourage people to think about who they might nominate as a future guest. So that's maybe my message. I'm all open to connections. I'm all open to collaborating with people. And I don't want to limit myself to audience. Guests who are just in the Philippines, for example, or guests who are in Australia. I'm open to interviewing people from all over the world as long as they have an interesting story to share and something of value or educational value to the listeners. So that's Samu't-Sari, and I hope that my future conversations will become more and more interesting to hear.
Just to let you know, Samu't-Sari is part of Guerrilla Podcast Syndicate Philippines and Australia, so you can check the website as well. Mimi, any if our listener and audience are wanted to contact you, have a chat with you about the podcast or about your book, how can they contact you? So that's a that's a
Okay.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So the first way that they could contact is to check out the Guerrilla Podcast page because it's open and all the podcasters are there. So they can just reach out, message us, and then I will be able to capture it. Or they can also contact me by going to my website. It's www.mimilaurilla.com. And my contact details are there. There's a contact page where you just type in your message and it will be sent to my inbox straight away.
All right, thank you so much. So all the description will be on the website and description will be on the description box below, so you can check that as well. And thank you so much for our guest for today, the podcast host of Samu't-Sari, Conversation with Mimi. So until next time, so see you next week again. So just remember, please like, subscribe, and comments, and of course, don't forget to click the bell button so that you can get a new episode or notification. And also, please support the Filipino podcaster aside from our syndicate network. So please support every Filipino podcaster. Thank you so much.
If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe so you're notified when a new episode is posted in Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or via RSS. While you're at it, if you found value in this show, rate and review this podcast and share it with your friends. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. And if you want to know more, check out www.guerrillapodcast.com.au or guerrillapodcast.com.ph. A Guerrilla Podcast Syndicate production.